Good day to all. So let's continue with part 2 of the lecture second. So in part 1, we discussed about the von Neumann architecture. So we have this CPU, we have a memory, and inside CPU we have temporary locations which we called registers. Okay, so this was the von Neumann model. So an instruction is fetched from the memory. The data is loaded into the registers, and this instruction, for example, if this is an add instruction, it gets its operands. Operands are the locations on which it has to apply the operation. It gets these operands from these registers, and applying this instruction on these operands, the data is then stored in some other register, okay, is written back into some register and then stored back into the memory. Okay, so we fetch the instruction, we means CPU. We fetch the instruction, we load the data into the registers, we apply the instruction on the operands present in the registers, and then we store back the final result into the memory. So this is the von Neumann architecture or von Neumann model with registers, and this model is the most commonly used model in current processors. Okay, that's why we will focus on this model only. So there are some other models also which are based on the flow of instructions, how are instruction executed. Okay, so there are two ways. As I said, for example, if CPU has to execute some instruction, so CPU should first know the address of a memory location where that instruction is stored. Okay, then going to the memory, it will fetch the instruction from that location and then executes that instruction. So this address is stored in a special register called program counter. So what we saw that a CPU, if it has to execute some instruction, it will first go to the PC program counter, which is some register here. From the PC, it will get the address. It will go to that address in memory and fetch the instruction from that particular location. And it will update the program counter. Now the program counter will contain the address of the next instruction. So program counter always contains the address of the next instruction that is to be executed. So this program counter is changed. One is that, let's say I have these instructions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The first address that will be stored in the program counter will be 1. Okay, so it will be stored in the PC. The CPU will fetch the instruction located at address 1, and now the PC will get updated to 2. Okay, then 3, then 4, then 5, then 6. This type of execution, this execution is called sequential execution. So this follows the program order. Okay, this execution follows the program order. However, if there is some branch instruction, for example, in your C programming, you may have seen, or in Python, you may have seen if-else conditions, or loops you have seen. Basically, loops are, or if-else is a branch instruction in machine form. So if I have a branch instruction that says that after executing 2, you have to go to instruction 6. So I have in PC, when I have 2, I will fetch this instruction, I will execute the instruction. In sequential execution, the next address should have been 3. But since this is a branch instruction, the PC will get updated with 6. So that after instruction 2, it will execute instruction 6 and will skip these instructions 3, 4 and 5. So here what I am discussing is that the execution follows some control. There is some control. Control is done with the help of PC, program counter. Program counter, depending upon the address stored in the program counter, we execute the instructions. So this type of execution model is also called control flow model. So what is a control flow model? Control flow model is the von Neumann model. It is the same von Neumann model. And why is it called the control flow model? Because the instruction is fetched and executed in control flow order. And that control is specified by the instruction pointer or program counter. Program counter is also called the instruction pointer. So von Neumann model is also called a control flow model. Why it is called a control flow model? Because the instruction is fetched and executed in control flow order, and that control is specified with the help of PC, program counter. So it is sequential. This model is sequential. However, if there is some control instruction, branch instruction, then only this sequential execution is broken. The another execution model is the data flow model. Data flow model. So in data flow model, we are not executing the instruction using some control flow order. Basically, the instructions are executed. Let's say instruction 1 is executed, and we know that every instruction is applying some operation on data. And that data may be the register, maybe the data stored in the register or in the memory. So an instruction is executed only when its data is ready. So let us say we have 3 instructions or 4 instructions. Let us say 1, 2 and 3 instructions. These instructions have data ready. So it will execute these instructions irrespective of their order. It may execute first 2, then 3 and then 1. So there is no order in data flow model, but the instructions are executed based on the availability of data. If the 4 has no data available currently, it will not get executed. Okay. We can see here that there is inherent parallelism in data flow model. Because if multiple instructions have data ready, then they will get executed. But in the control flow model, only that particular instruction is executed whose address is stored in the program counter. Okay, and in data flow model, those instructions are executed whose operands or whose data is ready. And there is no need of an instruction pointer or program counter. Instruction pointer and program counter is the same. So as I said that in data flow model, multiple instructions can execute at the same time. So it is inherently more parallel. So let me summarize what we read. So we have a program in higher level language. We convert this program into binary or machine instructions and then execute. These machine instructions, these are the instructions that belong to the ISA of a processor, instruction set architecture of a processor. And we know that for instruction set architecture, let's say any instruction set architecture may have 20 instructions. Okay, and these binary instructions will belong to these 20 instructions. This will be the combination of these 20 instructions. So remembering these binary instructions is quite cumbersome and it is quite difficult. So instead what we have done is, instead of naming these similarly as a binary stream, we are giving them some symbolic notations. So every binary instruction is given a symbolic notation, and that symbolic instruction is called the assembly instruction. So for every ISA, we have an assembly instruction. Sorry, we have an assembly language. Assembly language means these are the symbolic notations that represent the binary instructions belonging to the ISA. Okay, and when we have a program, we first compile that program, and it will give us an assembly program, and then we use another software called assembler to convert this assembly program into machine code or binary instructions. As I said, assembly instruction and machine instruction has a one-to-one mapping. Each assembly instruction is converted to one machine instruction. Okay, and the assembly instruction or the machine instruction, the format of the instruction is such that instruction has two parts. One part is the operation. What type of operation we want to do with the instruction. For example, there are many different instructions. So one instruction may be add, and in add instruction, what is the operation? The operation is add. Or in subtract instruction, the operation is subtract. The second part is the data on which this operation is to be performed. And the data, there are basically not data, we will be having the locations, either registers or memory. So we have to apply this operation on registers or on the memory. Okay, and the data is stored in that particular register or in that particular memory location. So we have two parts. This operation part is called opcode. So it specifies the type of operation, and this data part is called the operand. So let me give an example here. For example, this is an instruction add R1, R2, R3. This is an assembly instruction belonging to some assembly language. So every assembly language has a different format. So here we will assume that our assembly language, which we are assuming in this course, the first operand, this operand, is always the destination, and the other operands are the source operands. Source operands means that I have to apply this operation on the data stored in these locations. Okay, and after applying the operation, the final result is stored in the first register. This will be the assumption that we will hold in the entire course. So we have an opcode and we have the operands. So these are our operands, or we can say this is our data. So every instruction, the format of an instruction is, it has an opcode and then the operands. And I also said an assembler is a program that converts an assembly program into machine code. And you can also use, for example, you may have compiled a C program using GCC. So every C program, you can use GCC to generate an assembly file instead of generating directly an executable. So use GCC -L file name .c. The output will be file.s, and this will be an assembly file. Assembly file specific to your architecture, whatever your architecture is. Since I expect that most of you are using Intel processors, so this assembly, if you see this assembly file, it will have some instructions with these operands, EAX, EBX. You will understand that these operands are the registers. So I also said that every processor has specific registers, has a register set which we called general purpose registers, and from those registers there are also some special registers. For example, stack pointer is one special register, program counter is another, return address is another special register. For about the return address we will discuss later in the course. And I also discussed that the registers, these are named locations. For example, in ARM ISA, these registers are named as R0, R1, R15 up to R15. In x86, the registers are named as EAX, EBX, ECX, EDX. This was all about the registers, about the models, about the von Neumann architecture that we are going to discuss, about the format of an instruction. So the format of an instruction is we have an opcode, then there are operands. And operands are of two types, the source operand and the destination operand. Now let's briefly discuss about the memory. Since we have a unified memory in von Neumann architecture, let's discuss about the memory. So basically our memory is a large array of bits. For example, this is an array of bits, memory. Okay, and each location stores a single bit, 0 or 1. What we do in what most of the architectures, what almost every architecture does, instead of specifying a single bit, we are combining bits together into a single location. We are combining 8 bits together and we call this byte. So we can also say a memory is a sequence of bytes, an array of bytes. So here, let's say here each location is 8 bits. So 1 byte. Okay, we are not specifying 1 bit separately. You have to answer this question, why we are not specifying a single bit separately. Memory, we have a sequence of bytes and each byte has an address. Each byte has an address. So for example, if I have 20 bytes in my memory, so what will be the address? The first byte 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 up to 90. And we said that program will be stored at some location in the memory. And if I have to get the instructions from this program, I should know the address of that location. And that address is stored in the program counter. So our memory is what is our memory? Our memory is a sequence of bytes and each byte has an address. This type of memory where every byte has an address, this type of memory is called byte addressable memory. Every byte has an address. Okay, let me ask you a simple question here. Let's say we have instructions where each instruction is of 32 bits. Okay, let's say I have two instructions, 1 and 2. Okay, the instruction I1 and I2. Instruction 1 will be of 32 bits and instruction 2 will be of 32 bits. 32 bits means 4 bytes. So let's say instruction 1 is stored at location 4. So since it occupies 4 bytes, so instruction 1 will be stored at 4. If we have stored instruction 1 at 4, it will be stored at location 4, 5, 6 and 7. Because it occupies how many? 4 bytes. Then this next instruction I2 will be stored from 8, 9, 10 and 11. So if I have a program counter, it has address 4. So I will get the instruction at address 4. Instead of getting a single byte, I will get 4 bytes. Because I know an instruction is of 32 bits. So PC stores the starting address of an instruction. Now the PC will get updated. Instead of getting the updation as 5, it will get updated as 8 because the next instruction is stored at address 8. So PC is always updated like this: previous PC plus 4. Why plus 4? Because every instruction is of 4 bytes. So I hope you understood this byte addressable. What is a byte addressable memory? So a byte addressable memory is a memory where every location stores 8 bits and every byte has an address. And program counter stores the address of starting address of an instruction. So storing, let's say I have a data or I have an instruction, or let's say I have a data, and data is of 4 bytes. Okay, and I want to store this data in my memory. Let's say I have a memory. Zero, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is my address. So this data has 4 bytes. So 4 bytes means it can be stored in 4 locations. These 4 locations. So let me see. The first byte is, let's say in hexadecimal, the first byte is 1 1, the second byte is A1, the third byte is 2 3, and the fourth byte is 5 6. So this is byte 1, this is byte 2, this is byte 3, this is byte 4. The actual data is 1 1 A1 2 3 5 6. This is my data in hexadecimal. So there are 2 ways I can store this 4 bytes in my memory. One is take this 11, put it at this address, then A1, then 2 3, then 5 6. Okay, what we are doing, the most significant byte, this most significant byte, this is stored at the lowest address. Lowest address is 2. And the least significant byte is stored at the highest address. Highest address of a byte of 4 bytes is 5 here. The another approach is, let's say I have to store the same 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I want to store the data in these 4 locations. Another approach is store 11 at here, then A1, then 2 3, then 5 6. Here the most significant byte is stored at higher address and the least significant is stored at lowest address. So these are the two notations that you may use. Okay, and this procedure, this mechanism of storing the most significant byte at the least address, okay, most significant byte at the lowest address, this representation is called big Indian representation. And this mechanism, this representation of storing the most significant at the highest address, this is called little Indian. Your computer system, your architecture may be either big Indian or little Indian. So, for example, ARM ISA x86, they assume this representation. But there are some other ISAs, for example, Sun Spark is there, IBM PPC is there. They use the big Indian representation. This was all about the assembly, brief discussions about the assembly language and the type of memory, how the data is stored in the memory. In the next lecture, we will discuss about the ISA and what are the different components of the ISA. Let's meet in next lecture. Till then, goodbye.